Wall Street closes mixed. The Dow Jones breaks an 8-day gaining streak while the Nasdaq outperforms. Stocks in the Asia-Pacific trade largely higher, while the gift Nifty is also suggesting a positive start for the Indian market. Crude prices rise. Brent climbs back above $83 a barrel as the outlook on demand improves. Gold too trades higher ahead of the release of U.S. inflation data tomorrow. Inflation cools to an 11-month low of 4.83% in April. Core inflation eases even further to 3.5%. Experts say the RBI is unlikely to cut rates as things stand and will want to see a sustained drop in prices. In key earnings to track, Bharti Airtel will be reporting fourth quarter numbers today. From the broader market, also watch for numbers from Shree Cement, Siemens and Colgate-Palmolive. Search and rescue operations continue at the site of the hoarding collapse in Mumbai following yesterday's dust storm. The NDRF has rescued 74 people while 14 people have lost their lives so far. The Mumbai police has also filed an FIR against the owner of the illegal hoarding. Good morning in the Mumbai News Centre. I'm Sonal Bhutra. You're watching Power Breakfast. Those are the top headlines. So the earnings and the macro picture continues to be in focus. But first up, as always, let's take a look at the Asian markets. Well, we got a mixed handover from Wall Street, and right now that is the case with the Asian markets as well. So while the Taiwanese index is lower in trade, down around 20 odd points, the Hang Seng is doing well. That one is up around 0.4%. If we look at something like a Nikkei, that is higher in trade today. The Shanghai is too higher. We have the Kospi too, which is in the green right now. And the gift Nifty, that will come up for you on the screen because that one is indicating that the start for our own markets could be in the green today after that recovery that we saw from the lows in the markets yesterday. Let's move on and talk about the US markets. Wall Street ended mixed with Dow Jones down 81 points, posting its first losing session in 8 days, snapping its longest daily win streak since December. The S&P closed just below the flat line while the Nasdaq was up 0.3%. CNBC Seema Modi gets the wrap of all the action on Wall Street.
Markets were little changed in the U.S. as investors hit the pause on a Wall Street winning streak as they wait on key inflation data in the days ahead. The Dow down 81 points, S&P 500 off by 1, and Nasdaq held up by 47. OpenAI introducing a new AI model today, along with a desktop version of ChatGPT and an updated user interface. The new model is called Chat 4.0. The O stands for Omni, and you can talk to it, show it pictures, even interrupt it, and answer for clarification. The company says it's able to handle 50 different languages faster and with better quality than previous version. Developers will be able to immediately start building apps using the new model. OpenAI, which is backed by Microsoft, has been valued at more than $80 billion by investors. And shares of GameStop soaring Monday after Roaring Kitty, aka Keith Gill, posted online for the first time in 3 years. Gill inspired the epic short squeeze of 2021 when an army of retail investors put their money into GameStop and other so-called meme stocks. It was immortalized in the recent movie Dumb Money. After the post, just a hand-drawn image of a man in a chair leaning forward. GameStop surged more than 100% at one point. It was halted multiple times for volatility. It closed up on the day by 75%. We'll be watching that name. For CNBC Business News, I'm Seema Modi. Back over to you, Mumbai.
Okay, all right, that's the US market action. But a report from the New York Federal Reserve showed that consumers' expectations for inflation over the short and long term grew in April. Let's listen to former Boston Fed President Eric Rosengren and Venu Krishna, Barclays head of US equity strategy, talking about the state of the US economy and the Fed's inflation fight.
One of the concerns that we've had over the last 3 months has been that both the CPI and the PCE core levels have been leveling off. So in order to get the Fed to actually ease this year, we need to see that trend going down. So the Fed tends to focus on core PCE. That's at 2.8%. I do expect by the end of the year that it's likely to be closer to 2.5%. But when that trend starts reestablishing itself and starting to go down, and when we're talking about tenths of a percent, small changes in various components can mean that it's delayed before that trend is reestablished. So I am expecting that trend to reestablish a slow decline in inflation first towards 2.5% this year and towards 2% next year.
So I think in aggregate, even though S&P's sensitivity to overall macro factors has somewhat declined, but the sensitivity to CPI remains very high. The reality is that a big part of the inflation battle, or the easier part, if I can say that, has been won. But we are sticky at this point at 2.8% core PCE, which is what the Fed cares about. Now, in our view, for example, that decline or that improvement has indeed aided what we think the fair value of S&P outside of tech. One of the concerns which has cropped up is this stagflationary concern, for example, where growth slows and inflation remains high. Now, we think that's exaggerated, but I think it's going to show up in margins, and let's see whether we indeed make some progress on inflation going forward.
Okay, all right, that's some expert opinion coming in, and that's global market action. But how will these overnight cues impact our own markets? We have our research team joining in with just that. What's the trade setup looking like, the stocks that are likely to be in the news, and the action from the F&O space as well? A very good morning to all of you guys. Hormaz, let me come across to you first up. What is the market setup looking like today?
Morning, Sonal. And yesterday, sometime around in the afternoon, Mangalam highlighted a word. It called it wobbly, and that's what the market has been over the last few trading sessions. And yesterday was no different. And we've been highlighting this for the last few days, that the FIIs have been extremely net short on the market, and that may lead to some short covering. That happened yesterday, but not before. The Nifty fell to levels of 21,820 and then recovered almost 300 points from those levels. So that was the case for the Nifty. The Nifty Bank also saw a recovery of 700 points from the lows of the day. What has not changed, though, is that the FII selling continues, and another 4,000 crores came in yesterday. So taking that total number over last week and yesterday to well above 25,000 crores now for the FII selling figure. What has also not changed, though, is that the VIX continues to surge, and from that April 23 low of around 9.8, the VIX has almost more than doubled in the 13 trading sessions that have taken place so far. The broader markets remain mixed, but the pain in some of the small caps continue, but that is also because of some stock specific earnings reactions that we saw yesterday. So the small cap index was the underperformer. The mid cap index did well for itself, but among the sectoral indices as well, the pain was seen in auto and in PSU banks, which were the big underperformers yesterday, despite did not participate in that market recovery from the lows of the day. Some earnings reactions will continue today. JSPL, DLF, Sanofi reported numbers after market hours, so they'll react to results. The earnings today, it's an earnings heavy day. Bharti Airtel reports numbers today, as does Colgate Palmolive, Siemens, Bharti Hexacom also comes out with numbers, the new listing, along with stocks like Shree Cement. The handover from Wall Street is pretty flat, but then we have been indifferent to global cues over the last 8 to 10 days, so that might continue today as well. And the GIFT Nifty is indicating a slightly positive start, but the question is, will it sustain or not? Back to you.
That remains the question. Thank you so much, Hormaz, for joining us with all those cues. Now let me go across to Upasna. She will list out all the stocks to watch out for in today's trading session. Good morning, Upasna.
Good morning, Sonal. First up is Cochin Shipyard. The company has secured order in the range of 500 to 1,000 crores from a European client for construction of hybrid service operation vessel. That's the reason the stock will be in focus today. Next up is RVNL. The company has received letter of acceptance worth 239 crores from Southern Railway. Next up is Vedanta. The board meeting is scheduled to be held on 16th of May, mainly for raising of funds. Next up is Shriram Finance, the company to sell its housing finance subsidiary, that is Warburg Pincus, for almost 4,630 crore rupees. That's the reason even this stock will remain in focus today. In terms of earnings, Sanofi reported its numbers after market hours yesterday. The revenue was down almost 74% on a Y-on-Y basis. Margins stood at 30% versus 28.2% on Y-on-Y basis. Next up is JSPL. The revenue was down almost 1.5% on a Y-on-Y basis, and margins stood at 18.1% versus 16% on a Y-on-Y basis. Next up is Chalet Hotels. The revenue was up 24% on a Y-on-Y basis, and margins stood at 43.7% versus 45% on a Y-on-Y basis. And lastly, DLF also reported its numbers. The revenue was up 47% on Y-on-Y basis. While coming to bookings, there was a dip in bookings, both sequentially as well as on Y-on-Y basis, mainly due to the high base.
Okay, all right. So thank you so much, Upasna, for joining us with all those details. Those are some stocks on our radar. Let me go across to Mangalam finally. He's joining in with all the cues from the F&O space. Hey, Mangalam.
Good morning. So yesterday, the Nifty recovered nearly 300 points from the day's low, and it was a very volatile trading session. But typically what happens is that when there is some fear and there is a swing low which is made. From there, if the market recovers, then looks like that swing low is extremely formidable for the near term at least. So that low of 21,821 is an extremely important support to watch out for. And it's from this 21,750 to 21,800 mark where the Nifty has seen a bounce multiple times in the past as well. So have we made a low or not is the big question. The important part is that the second rally that we saw towards the second half of trade saw the Nifty Bank participate and the Nifty Midcap Index as well, which was underperforming for most part of today's trading session. So that makes bulls a little more relieved than earlier. But what's not relieving is the FII selling, which is 4,500 crore in the cash market. One would have thought that with a 300-point recovery from the lows, there would be some short covering, but that wasn't the case to be as well. In fact, the FIIs went ahead and sold more in the index futures, almost 1,000 crores. Added 16,000 longs, but added nearly double the short contracts out there as well. So as a result of which the FII long exposure, while it is at 34%, the net contracts at 1.7 lakh shorts are some among the highest that we've ever seen on the indices. So at some point this will give. When that point comes is something that we'll all have to keep an eye out on. For the Nifty, the 22,100 put saw a fair amount of writing for a premium of 100 rupees. And on the way up, the 22,100 call and the 22,200 calls both are equally active, telling you that the range for the market would be 22,000 at the lower level, and on the way up, maybe between 22,300 and 22,350 is where we would see some sort of resistance. And that ties in perfectly with the technical setup as well. The 100-day moving average, 22,000, and between 22,300 and 22,350 are both the 50 and the 20-day moving averages. It's a Tuesday, which means it's a financial services expiry today as well. So to that extent, the 21,800 call out there is extremely active. The Nifty Financial Services is close to 22,250. So there is a bit of an uptick out there. A lot of long positions added on names like Siemens ahead of numbers. Yesterday, the stock did well. And I'm watching out for Piramal Enterprises enters F&O ban once again.
Okay, all right. Thank you guys for joining us. So that's the Power Prep segment and the cues for the day. Time for a short break. When we return, retail inflation slowed to an 11-month low in April. We get to the details on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. It's time to get you some important macro cues we are tracking this morning. Retail inflation slowed to an 11-month low of 4.83% in April, while core inflation eased even further to 3.2%. Rita Seng is joining in with more details on this one.
Thanks for that. Consumer price inflation for the month of April coming in at an 11-month low of 4.83%, but only marginally lower than the 4.85% reading we saw in March. And the reason we did not see any major decline in inflation just yet is food prices that continue to remain a spot of bother. Food and beverages inflation, which accounts for more than half of the CPI basket in terms of weightage, rose to 7.87% in April, and this in turn was led by higher prices in 4 subgroups, and that is cereals, meat and fish, oils and fat, and fruits. Now this acceleration is expected. It is a typical summer phenomena, so not really a big surprise. The consumer food price index overall stood at 8.7% in April from 8.5% in March. In the miscellaneous items, the personal care and effects sub-segment saw some notable increase. Apart from that, the moderation was led largely by a deflation in the fuel and light segment, softer prints for clothing and footwear, tobacco groups, etc. Now, core inflation, which is inflation without food and fuel, continued to come down for the 10th month in a row at 3.2% in April. Overall, the April inflation numbers largely in line with the RBI trajectory, and they won't really move the needle on policy loosening just yet. The economists we were speaking to were of the view that with continued uncertainty, especially on the risk to food inflation after the second quarter, the chances of a change in stance in the upcoming policy appears rather dim.
Okay, Ritu, thank you so much for joining us with that macro data picture. We'll slip into another break. When we come back, we'll get you all the cues from the commodities market, so stay tuned for that. Welcome back. You're still watching Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. We've spoken about equity markets and macro picture as well. It's time to talk about commodities. Manisha Gupta is joining us with all the update. Hi, Manisha. Good morning.
Morning, Sonal. Thank you so much for that. I'll start with gold prices, where we have seen some decline come in, and this is ahead of the U.S. inflation data. Well, remember, you have the CPI and the PPI, both those numbers coming in, and they are expected slightly on the higher side. And with that expectation, there is some profit taking that we have seen in gold. The prices did decline 1% overnight, but with all of this as well, the traders are pricing in 66% of a rate cut expectation in the month of September. Now, that is what is keeping the prices above $2,300 an ounce. So it really has been trading within the $2,300 to $2,360 on the higher side. But it really is about the metals as a sector, which continues to gain up. So you have copper prices gaining yet another 2% overnight. It's trading more than 2-year highs right now. Zinc prices are now trading at the 13-month highs. We have seen 7.5% of gains for zinc in past 1 month. Lead is now trading at a 24-week highs with 4% gains in past month. Iron ore prices have been surging well. Remember, China has come out with more support for the property sector. There are supportive policy measures for that, and that clearly has been supportive. In any case, most of these metals are being looked at in sense of strong, bullish, long-term demand. There are tight supply situations right now, and then the markets also are looking at the monsoon season, the rain season, especially in Asia, where you would be looking at some slight decline in mining, also in sense of construction, but the kind of demand that you're looking in from AI and EV, that seems to be quite supportive for overall sector.
Okay, all right. So metal prices are firm. Thank you so much, Manisha, for joining us with that update as always. Let's also listen into what the head of oil research at Goldman Sachs had to say about the current oil demand and the rising oil prices.
On the demand side, I would characterize oil demand globally as still pretty solid, especially in India and the US. But at the margin, we're seeing some misses in China. And I do think that has to do with the fact that relatively high oil prices relative to natural gas prices are incentivizing, for instance, Chinese trucks to switch from oil to gas. On the supply side, I think the story of last year, where supply growth outside of core OPEC is strong, continues to be the case. About a month ago, we highlighted that $85 per barrel for TI and $90 for Brent is likely going to be a ceiling because there's a lot of spare capacity. More than 6% of the global oil market is currently in spare capacity.
Okay, all right. That is an expert opinion coming on oil prices and the trajectory going ahead. Let's move on to some updates from Mumbai. A freak dust storm caused a billboard to collapse in the Ghatkopar area of Mumbai, resulting in the death of 14 people. Santya is joining us on the phone line with further details and updates on this case. Santya?
Good morning. See, so far 14 people have been reported dead, 43 are injured. The rescue operations by NDRF team is underway. There are 2 teams of NDRF on the spot. The incident took place in Mumbai's Ghatkopar area yesterday. Ghatkopar comes under the central suburbs of Mumbai. As you mentioned, that it was caused by a thunderstorm. Now, Mumbai police has also filed an FIR in the matter. The FIR has been filed against the director of Ego Media. The hoarding actually belonged to Ego Media. The director is Bhavesh Bhinde and others. Those are the people are yet to be named in the FIR. Bhavesh Bhinde and others are booked under IPC 304. That's punishment for culpable homicide not amounting to murder. And IPC 338 and 337, that is punishment for causing grievous hurt to a person by an act endangering human life and their safety. Along with this, common intention section has also been added in the FIR. Now, whether or not any arrests have been made, that update is yet to come from Mumbai police. But talking about the illegal hoarding aspect, see, this is not for the first time that illegal hoarding has become a topic of conversation in Mumbai. In fact, it was in 2011 for the first time that an organization filed a petition in Bombay High Court highlighting that what a menace the illegal hoardings have become and how they can pose a threat to safety and security of people. Bombay High Court took note of that, and it was in 2017 that Bombay High Court issued directives and ensured that and asked state government to ensure that no illegal hoardings, are there in the city. In fact, next year itself, Bombay High Court itself initiated a contempt plea. Bombay High Court observed that the orders issued by Bombay High Court were not followed, hence the contempt plea. In fact, recently Bombay High Court pulled up Maharashtra state government. Bombay High Court observed that the state government has failed to ensure that this menace of illegal hoarding is taken care of. And now we can see the result. Unfortunately, 14 people have lost their lives to the tragedy. There are people who are hospitalized. There are 43 people who are hospitalized. One of them is said to be critical. Now talking about the IMD warning. So yesterday, IMD's warnings were delayed. CNBC TV 18 highlighted that IMD did mention a possibility of thunderstorm, but it did not mention anywhere how strong the thunderstorm could be. In fact, their nowcast warning, a warning which is supposed to come 2 hours before the incident takes place, that also was delayed by at least a couple of hours because the nowcast warning for 4 p.m. yesterday was issued at 4:30 p.m. So we can see the delay there also. And when asked, IMD officials said that it was because of a network problem. It was because of a technical error. The warning was delayed. IMD claims that they updated the warning on time, but because of a poor network, it took some time for the warning to display on their website. Talking about what IMD's forecast is for today, see, for now, for Mumbai, IMD has not given any warning for any kind of thunderstorm. IMD has said that there's no possibility of a thunderstorm. IMD hasn't said that there is any possibility of a thunderstorm for Mumbai. But for nearby areas, that's Palghar and Thane, IMD has mentioned that there's a possibility of thunderstorm. Once again, the agency hasn't mentioned how strong or severe the thunderstorm could be. Only for Raigad, and Mumbai's twin city, Navi Mumbai, falls under Raigad. Only for Raigad, IMD has said that there's a possibility of thunderstorm and the wind speed could go up to 30 to 40 kilometers per hour. As I said, NDRF teams are on the spot. Search and rescue operations are underway. 14 people, unfortunately, reported dead so far.
Okay, all right, Sandhya, thank you so much for joining us with that update. It definitely is an unfortunate event. We'll keep coming back to you for more updates on this one. But with that, we'll take your leave on this edition of Power Breakfast. Do stay tuned. Bazaar Morning Call comes up next.